The bodies of 5 children, ages 1 to 8, were found in Alabama this afternoon.
It really is shocking, Bob and Lenise, and a devastating story at that. Investigators actually just wrapped up. They've been on scene since about 3 o'clock today. We're told they used helicopters. It was state investigators, federal investigators, investigators from South Carolina, where the father eventually led investigators to the crime scene that's behind me across the street. That's where deputies say they found 5 children wrapped in plastic bags. Now, in garbage bags. Police say the children's father, Timothy Jones, is suspected of killing his 5 children.
And as a mother, if I could personally rip his face off, I would. I hear what my kids went through, and I'm just being honest. I hear what my kids went through and what they endured. Make him feel everything they felt.
I didn't even flinch. I knew what I had to do. Imagine hearing those words from a man who murdered 5 of his own children. It's unimaginable, isn't it? A parent, someone entrusted with the most sacred responsibility, deliberately taking the lives of those they were meant to protect. But what would drive a father to commit such a horrific act? The truth behind this chilling crime is even darker than you can imagine, and it started long before the tragedy itself. But what pushed Timothy Ray Jones Jr. to cross the line? Was it something that had been building up for years, something he kept hidden, or was it a violent snap? In the coming minutes, you'll hear the raw details, the shocking truths that were buried for far too long. And trust me, these details are not for the faint of heart. Welcome to The Last Verdict. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let us know where you're watching from. Case 1. Tommy Lynn Sells. On December 31st, 1999, in Del Rio, Texas, 13-year-old Katie Harris was brutally murdered in her sleep, and her 10-year-old friend Crystal Surlees narrowly escaped with her life. This harrowing attack would lead to the capture of one of America's most notorious serial killers. Tommy Lynn Sells was born on June 28, 1964, in Oakland, California. He was one of 5 children born to an unwed mother. At 18 months old, Sells contracted meningitis, which tragically claimed the life of his twin sister, Tammy Jean. Afterward, he was sent to live with his aunt, Bonnie Walpole, in Holcomb, Missouri. When he was 5, he returned to his mother after she discovered that Walpole wanted to adopt him. Throughout his early childhood, Sells experienced neglect and abuse. At age 7, he began drinking alcohol and later used narcotics. He also claimed to have been sexually abused by a man named Willis Clark, who was later identified as a pedophile. At 13, Sells's mother abandoned him, leaving him to fend for himself. This abandonment marked a turning point, leading him to a life of crime and violence. By December 1999, Sells had been living a transient lifestyle, moving from town to town and committing various crimes. On December 31st, he broke into the home of Katie Harris in Del Rio, Texas. He brutally murdered Katie and attacked Crystal Surlees, slashing her throat. Miraculously, Crystal survived and provided a detailed description of Sells, leading to his arrest. Crystal Surlees' testimony and a composite sketch led to Sells' identification and subsequent arrest on January 2, 2000. During questioning, Sells confessed to the murder of Katie Harris and the attack on Crystal Surlees. He was cooperative and provided details that matched the crime scene. Sells was convicted of capital murder for the death of Katie Harris. He was sentenced to death in September 2000. Sells was executed by lethal injection on April 3, 2014, at the Huntsville unit in Texas. He was pronounced dead at 6:27 p.m. CDT. The community was left in shock and fear, grappling with the realization that a serial killer had been operating undetected for years. The case received extensive media attention, highlighting the vulnerability of children and the importance of vigilant law enforcement. Tommy Lynn Sells was executed in 2014. His death marked the end of a long and tragic chapter for the victims and their families. Case 2. Carl Eugene Watts. It was a quiet Sunday morning when the body of 20-year-old Gloria Steele was discovered in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Little did anyone know, This would mark the beginning of uncovering a chilling pattern of murders that spanned over a decade. But what led Carl Eugene Watts to commit such horrifying crimes? Stick with us as we delve deeper into his story. Carl Eugene Watts was born on November 7, 1953, in Killeen, Texas, to Richard Eugene Watts and Dorothy Mae Young. His father was a private first class in the United States Army, and his mother was a kindergarten art teacher. Shortly after his birth, the family moved back to West Virginia, but by 1962 they settled in Inkster, Michigan, where Watts's mother remarried. Growing up, Watts faced several challenges. At the age of 8, he contracted meningitis, which nearly took his life. Following the illness, family members noticed a significant change in his personality. He became more introverted and withdrawn. Academic struggles ensued, and he was held back a grade in school. Despite these challenges, Watts developed an interest in hunting and spent time with his grandfather in rural West Virginia. Though Watts appeared calm, there were instances that foreshadowed a darker side. He began having violent dreams about battling off and killing the wicked spirits of women, which interrupted his sleep cycle. These fantasies escalated over time, leading to troubling behavior in his teenage years. By 1974, Watts had moved to Kalamazoo, Michigan, where he enrolled at Western Michigan University. It was during this time that his violent tendencies manifested in real-life attacks. On October 30, 1974, Watts brutally murdered Gloria Steele, a 20-year-old student. She had been stabbed multiple times and left in a secluded area. In a moment of desperation, Watts made the decision to kill Steele, an act that would change everything. What do you think triggered Watts to commit this crime? Leave your thoughts in the comments. The murder of Gloria Steele went unsolved for several years. However, investigators began to connect the dots, uncovering a web of lies and deception that pointed straight to Watts. During the investigation, Watts remained evasive, but detectives noticed signs that hinted at his involvement, such as inconsistencies in his alibis and behavior that didn't match his statements. The defense argued that Watts acted out of a desire to free the spirits of his victims, but the prosecution's case was compelling. Evidence showed that Watts had a history of violent behavior and had been linked to multiple unsolved murders. In the end, Watts was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. What do you think of the trial's outcome? Was justice truly served? Let me know in the comments. The community was left reeling from the news, unable to comprehend how someone they trusted could commit such an atrocity. The media coverage was extensive, with many questioning how Watts managed to hide his true nature for so long. As of now, Watts remains incarcerated, serving his sentence at the Ionia Maximum Correctional Facility in Michigan. Some argue that he hasn't truly changed, while others believe he's shown remorse over the years. Do you think Watts has truly changed? Will he ever be eligible for parole? Share your thoughts below. Case 3. Gilles de Rais, the Bluebeard of Brittany. In the early 15th century, Gilles de Rais was a celebrated hero of the 100 Years' War, renowned for his valor and service alongside Joan of Arc. Yet, by 1440, his name had become synonymous with one of the most horrific series of crimes in medieval France. The transformation from a national hero to a notorious criminal is both chilling and perplexing. Born in 1405 in Champtocé-sur-Loire, France, Gilles de Rais hailed from the noble house of Laval. Orphaned at a young age, he was raised by his maternal grandfather, Jean de Craon, who was known for his ambition and lack of moral restraint. Under his grandfather's influence, Gilles was introduced to the complexities of court politics and military affairs. At the age of 16, Gilles joined the French military during the latter part of the 100 Years' War. His bravery and leadership led to his appointment as Marshal of France, a prestigious title he shared with Joan of Arc. Together, they played pivotal roles in lifting the siege of Orléans and securing the coronation of Charles VII. Despite his public acclaim, Gilles' personal life was marked by excess and indulgence. He squandered his vast inheritance on lavish lifestyles, extravagant feasts, and the construction of grand castles. This reckless spending eventually led to financial ruin and a growing sense of desperation. By the mid-1430s, Gilles had withdrawn from public life, retreating to his estates in Brittany. Facing financial insolvency and seeking to regain his lost fortune, he turned to the occult. He enlisted the help of alchemists and occultists, including a Florentine priest named François Prelati, in an attempt to summon demons and discover the philosopher's stone. In his quest for wealth and power, Gilles began abducting young children, primarily boys from poor families. He subjected them to unspeakable horrors, including torture, sexual assault, and ritualistic killings. The exact number of victims remains uncertain, but estimates range from several dozen to over 140. His crimes were committed in the confines of his castles, where he believed he could operate without scrutiny. What drives an individual to commit such atrocities? Let us know your thoughts below. Gilles' downfall began in 1440, when he kidnapped a priest named Jean de l'Hôpital. This brazen act violated both ecclesiastical and secular laws, drawing the attention of local authorities. Subsequent investigations uncovered evidence of his gruesome crimes. During the trial, Gilles confessed to his crimes, detailing the abductions, murders, and occult practices. He claimed to have committed these acts under the influence of demonic forces, though many historians believe his confessions were coerced under threat of torture. In October 1440, Gilles de Rais was tried by both ecclesiastical and secular courts. He was found guilty of heresy, sodomy, and the murder of over 140 children. The trial was conducted with the assistance of the Inquisition, reflecting the era's intertwining of religious and judicial authority. On October 26, 1440, Gilles de Rais was executed by hanging, with his body subsequently burned. His death marked the end of a reign of terror that had plagued the region for years. The revelation of Gilles de Rais' crime sent shockwaves through the local communities. Families were left in mourning, and trust in the nobility was severely eroded. His once esteemed name became a symbol of betrayal and horror. The trial and execution garnered widespread attention, with chroniclers documenting the proceedings in detail. Over time, his story became the stuff of legend, inspiring tales like Bluebeard, which depicted a wealthy man who murdered his wives. Gilles de Rais' legacy remains a subject of historical debate. Some view him as a victim of political machinations, while others see him as a precursor to modern serial killers. His story serves as a grim reminder of the potential for darkness within individuals, regardless of their status or past heroism. Case 4. Vaughn Greenwood. In the early hours of December 1, 1974, the lifeless body of Charles Jackson was discovered near the Central Library in Los Angeles. His throat had been slashed, and his shoes were removed and placed beside his body. This grisly scene marked the beginning of a series of brutal killings that would terrorize the Skid Row area for the next 2 months. Vaughn Orrin Greenwood was born on January 19, 1944, in Pennsylvania. Little is known about his early life, but records indicate that he had a criminal history prior to the Skid Row murders. In 1966, he was convicted of a knifing assault in Chicago and served 5.5 years in prison before returning to California. His return to California in 1974 marked the beginning of his killing spree. Greenwood's previous conviction for a violent assault suggests a propensity for aggression. However, there is no detailed information available about his behavior leading up to the murders. By late 1974, Greenwood was living in Los Angeles and frequented the Skid Row area. His emotional state and personal struggles leading up to the murders are not well documented. Between December 1, 1974, and January 31, 1975, Greenwood murdered 9 men in the Skid Row area. The victims were typically homeless individuals, and their throats were slashed. In some cases, salt was sprinkled around the bodies and their shoes were removed and placed beside them. These ritualistic elements led to speculation about possible occult influences, though this theory remains unconfirmed. The murders went unsolved for several weeks, causing public fear and media frenzy. Greenwood was eventually apprehended on February 3, 1975, after a failed attempt to murder a 12th victim. During the investigation, Greenwood remained largely silent. Detectives noted his calm demeanor, but there is no detailed information about his behavior during questioning or any psychological evaluations. Greenwood was convicted of 9 counts of murder, including 8 of the Skid Row slasher killings. He was sentenced to life imprisonment on January 19, 1977. Greenwood served his sentence at the California Men's Colony in San Luis Obispo. He died on December 18, 2020, at the age of 76. The Skid Row community was left reeling from the murders. The victims were often marginalized individuals, and their deaths highlighted issues of homelessness and societal neglect. The media extensively covered the case, with many questioning how Greenwood managed to evade capture for so long. The sensationalized reporting also led to public fear and scrutiny of the Skid Row area. Greenwood passed away in 2020 while serving his life sentence. There are no reports of any signs of remorse or rehabilitation during his incarceration. Case 5. Karl Panzram. It was a quiet night when the lifeless body of a prison laundry foreman was discovered. But what followed would uncover a tale more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Karl Panzram was born on June 28, 1891, on a farm near East Grand Forks, Minnesota, to East Prussian immigrants Johann and Matilda Panzram. He was the 6th of 7 children. From a young age, Panzram's life was marked by hardship. His father abandoned the family when Karl was just 7 years old. Around the same time, Karl developed an infection in his ear that required surgery, which was performed at home and worsened the condition. His mother, struggling to manage the household, imposed strict discipline. Panzram later reflected on his early childhood with the sentiment that he was not liked by other children. By the age of 5, he claimed that he was a liar and thief, and recalled that he became meaner the older he grew. At the age of 12, Karl was arrested for being drunk and disorderly. Shortly after, he stole cake, apples, and a revolver from a neighbor's home. In October 1903, his mother sent him to the Minnesota State Training School, where he was reportedly beaten, tortured, and raped by staff members. By the time Karl was in his late teens, he had accumulated a lengthy criminal record, primarily for burglary and robbery offenses. At age 14, after being paroled from the reform school, he ran away from home to live on the streets. He often traveled via train cars and later recalled having been gang raped by a group of homeless men during one of these journeys. His first confirmed murder occurred in 1908 when he was convicted and sent to the United States Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Of his experience at the correctional facility, he said, "I was a pretty rotten egg before I went there. But when I left there, all the good that may have been in me had been kicked and beaten out of me." Karl Panzram's criminal activities escalated over the years. In 1920, he stole enough money to buy a yacht, the Akiska, and embarked on a murder spree that spanned several countries. He lured sailors aboard his yacht, raped them, and then killed them, dumping their bodies into the sea. He claimed to have murdered 10 men in this manner. His killing spree eventually led him back to the United States, where he was arrested in 1928 for burglary. During his incarceration, he confessed to killing 3 young boys earlier that month. In 1929, while imprisoned at the United States Penitentiary in Leavenworth, Kansas, Panzram killed a prison laundry foreman by beating him to death with an iron bar. For this crime, he was sentenced to death. Karl Panzram was executed by hanging on September 5, 1930, at the age of 39. As officers attempted to place the customary black hood over his head, he spat in the executioner's face. When asked for any last words, he responded, "Yes, hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could kill a dozen men while you're screwing around." His life and crimes were later documented in his autobiography, Killer, A Journal of Murder, which was published posthumously. Case 6, David Adam Pate. It was a quiet afternoon when a group of children stumbled upon a decomposing body in a secluded Lancaster, South Carolina woodland. What they uncovered would unravel a chilling tale of violence and a community left in disbelief. What drives someone to commit such a brutal act against a friend? Let's delve into the disturbing details of this case. David Adam Pate was born in 1988 and raised in Lancaster, South Carolina, Known for his distinctive appearance, including a forked tongue and facial tattoos, Pate's outward demeanor often overshadowed his troubled past. Growing up, he faced numerous challenges, including a history of criminal behavior that began in his teenage years. Pate's criminal history was extensive, with prior convictions for burglary and other offenses starting at age 17. These early brushes with the law hinted at a deeper, more concerning pattern of behavior. In October 2013, Pate and 33-year-old Ricky James, an acquaintance, spent time together, drinking and socializing. The exact motivations behind Pate's actions remain unclear, but what transpired next would forever alter the course of their lives. During their time together, Pate lured James into a wooded area under the pretense of continuing their gathering. Once there, Pate brutally attacked James, stabbing him nearly 40 times with a butcher knife. He then concealed the body under a pile of leaves. The victim's remains were discovered by children playing in the woods weeks later. What could have driven Pate to commit such a heinous act? Leave your thoughts below. The discovery of James's body by children led to an immediate investigation. Authorities quickly identified Pate as a suspect, especially after learning he had been in custody for a disorderly conduct charge shortly before the murder. Investigators found that Pate had a history of erratic behavior. In a taped interview, he chillingly admitted to the crime, stating, "I didn't know. I thought I might cut his head off." He also likened his actions to the character Michael Myers from the Halloween films. Pate pleaded guilty to the murder of Ricky James. In court, prosecutors presented evidence of his prior criminal history and the brutal nature of the crime. The defense did not offer a compelling argument, and Pate was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Circuit Court Judge Dan Hall described the murder as senseless, remorseless, and emotionless. Pate's sentence reflected the severity of his actions and the community's need for justice. The murder left the Lancaster community in shock. The brutal nature of the crime and the fact that it involved someone they knew made it all the more unsettling. Media outlets widely covered the case, focusing on Pate's appearance and the gruesome details of the crime. His mugshot, showing his forked tongue and facial tattoos, went viral, drawing national attention. David Adam Pate remains incarcerated, serving his life sentence without the possibility of parole. Over the years, he has shown no signs of remorse for his actions. Do you think Pate has shown any remorse over the years? Share your thoughts below. Case 7. Graham John Ennis. It was a quiet morning in September 2019 when Graham John Ennis, a convicted criminal with a history of violence, escaped from Risdon Prison in Tasmania. What followed was a tense manhunt that would reveal the depths of his criminal past and the vulnerabilities in the prison system. Graham John Ennis was born in Tasmania and grew up in the northwest region of the state. His early life was marked by a series of criminal activities that escalated over time. In 2015, Ennis was involved in a dramatic chase where he allegedly fired a shot at police during an attempted escape, leading to his arrest after officers shot out his vehicle's tires. By 2016, Ennis was sentenced to 8 years in prison for shooting at police officers. Despite being housed in a minimum security facility, his history of violence and previous escape attempts raised concerns about his classification and the adequacy of security measures. On September 23, 2019, Ennis and another inmate escaped from Risdon Prison. They used scaffolding left over from a mural project to climb onto the roof, then scaled down a wall using a rope made from torn bedsheets. The escape triggered a large-scale manhunt involving multiple police resources. Residents of Risdon Vale were alarmed as police conducted door-to-door searches and schools were placed on lockdown. Ennis, who had the word thug tattooed on his neck, was considered dangerous and was advised not to be approached. Ennis was recaptured the following day, September 24, 2019, in bushland near Risdon Vale. He was found dehydrated but unharmed. During the investigation, it was revealed that Ennis had previously escaped from custody, including an incident in 2010 where he assaulted officers during a prison van escape. In November 2019, Ennis appeared in court facing charges related to his escape and theft during the period he was on the run. The court proceedings highlighted concerns about the prison system's ability to manage inmates with violent histories. The escape and subsequent manhunt drew attention to the security protocols at Risdon Prison and the classification of inmates. The incident raised questions about the effectiveness of minimum security housing for individuals with a history of violent behavior. As of the latest reports, Graham John Ennis remains incarcerated. His repeated escape attempts and violent actions have led to ongoing scrutiny of Tasmania's correctional facilities and their handling of high-risk inmates. What do you think about the classification of inmates with violent histories in minimum security facilities? Should there be stricter measures in place to prevent escapes and ensure public safety? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Case 8. Christopher Stockton. On January 12, 2024, Christopher Stockton called emergency services, claiming that 22-month-old Charlie Roberts had choked on a cookie and was unresponsive. Paramedics rushed to the scene in Darlington, England, but upon arrival, they found no signs of choking. Instead, Charlie exhibited severe head injuries indicative of violent trauma. Tragically, he passed away the following day at Newcastle's Royal Victoria Infirmary. Christopher Stockton, 38, had recently moved in with Paula Roberts and her son Charlie, just 7 days before the incident. Paula, 41, had 5 children, with Charlie being the youngest. Despite concerns about Stockton's behavior, Paula continued the relationship and left Charlie in his care on the morning of the tragedy. On the morning of January 12, 2024, Paula left for work, leaving Charlie alone with Stockton. Within 20 minutes, Stockton called emergency services, claiming Charlie had choked on a cookie. However, medical examinations revealed that Charlie had suffered catastrophic head injuries, consistent with being violently shaken or thrown, leading to his death the next day. An investigation revealed that Charlie had sustained multiple unexplained injuries over several months. Despite Paula's awareness of these injuries, she failed to seek medical attention or intervene. Stockton was arrested and charged with murder and child cruelty. Paula was also arrested and charged with child neglect. At Teesside Crown Court, Stockton was found guilty of murder and child cruelty. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years. Paula pleaded guilty to child neglect and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. The community was left reeling from the news, unable to comprehend how someone they trusted could commit such an atrocity. The case highlighted the importance of vigilance and intervention in safeguarding vulnerable children. Charlie's father, Barry Greenwell, expressed his grief, stating that Charlie was a much-loved son and grandson who has been taken away needlessly and has left the whole family with a void that will never be filled. As of now, Christopher Stockton remains incarcerated, serving his sentence. Paula Roberts is also serving her prison term. The case serves as a somber reminder of the need for awareness and action to protect children from harm. Case 9. Joseph Ferlazzo. It was a quiet night when Emily Jean Schwartz's dismembered body was discovered in a camper van in St. Albans, Vermont. But what followed would uncover a tale more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Emily Jean Schwartz, 22, was a vibrant young woman from New Hampshire. She was an aspiring singer with a passion for animals and a dream of becoming a cosmetologist. Emily had a close-knit family who described her as a beautiful soul with an infectious personality. She graduated from Concord High School and was known for her dedication to her goals and her ability to make others feel good about themselves. Joseph Ferlazzo, 45, married Emily in 2020. While there were no public signs of violence in their relationship, the couple's decision to travel to Vermont for their first wedding anniversary would set the stage for a tragic event. On October 16, 2021, Joseph and Emily arrived in Bolton, Vermont to celebrate their anniversary. The following morning, Joseph returned home alone, claiming that Emily had stormed off after an argument. However, investigators later discovered Emily's dismembered remains in their camper van. Joseph initially stated that he had acted in self-defense, but this claim was not supported by the evidence. The investigation revealed that Joseph had killed Emily by shooting her twice in the head. He then drove her body to St. Albans, where he dismembered it with a hacksaw and placed the body parts in plastic bags. During the trial, Joseph maintained his self-defense claim, but the jury found this inconsistent with the evidence presented. In April 2025, Joseph Ferlazzo was sentenced to 42.5 years in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of his wife, Emily Jean Schwartz. The judge described the crime as horrendous and a case of extreme domestic violence. Emily's family expressed relief at the conviction, stating that justice had been served. The community was left reeling from the news, unable to comprehend how someone they trusted could commit such an atrocity. Emily's family and friends have since worked to honor her memory and raise awareness about domestic violence. The media coverage was extensive, with many questioning how Joseph managed to hide his true nature for so long. The case has sparked discussions about the signs of domestic violence and the importance of supporting victims. As of now, Joseph Ferlazzo remains incarcerated, serving his sentence in a Vermont state prison. Some argue that he hasn't truly changed, while others believe he may have shown remorse over the years. Case 10. Gavin Plum. In October 2023, a quiet evening in Essex was shattered when police raided a flat in Harlow, uncovering a disturbing plot to kidnap, rape, and murder one of Britain's most beloved television presenters, Holly Willoughby. Gavin Plum, a 37-year-old security guard from Harlow, Essex, had been living a solitary life, largely unnoticed by his neighbors. Behind closed doors, however, he harbored a dangerous obsession with Holly Willoughby. Over several years, he amassed over 10,000 images of her, including deepfake pornography, and meticulously researched her personal life. He frequented online forums, such as Abduct Lovers, where he discussed violent fantasies and sought advice on carrying out his plans. Plum's criminal history included previous convictions for attempted kidnap and false imprisonment, indicating a pattern of troubling behavior. Despite his claims of these being mere fantasies, his actions suggested otherwise. In October 2023, Plum's sinister plans began to take shape. He purchased items for a kidnap kit, including chloroform, metal cable ties, ropes, and shackles. He meticulously mapped out a route to Holly Willoughby's residence and discussed his intentions in graphic detail with an individual named Mark. Unbeknownst to Plum, Mark was an undercover police officer from the United States. On October 4, 2023, Essex Police, acting on information provided by the undercover officer, raided Plum's flat. They discovered the disturbing evidence of his plans, including the kidnap kit and incriminating communications. Plum was arrested and later charged with soliciting murder, encouraging or assisting the commission of kidnap, and encouraging or assisting the commission of rape. During the investigation, Plum remained largely uncooperative, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. The prosecution presented detailed records of his online activities, purchases, and communications, painting a clear picture of his intent. The defense argued that Plum's actions were mere fantasies, but the jury found him guilty on all counts. On July 12, 2024, at Chelmsford Crown Court, Plum was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 16 years. The judge emphasized the severity of his actions and the significant risk he posed to women. The victim impact statement, though not publicly released, was described as detailing catastrophic consequences for Holly Willoughby. The discovery of Plum's plot had a profound impact on Holly Willoughby. She stepped down from her role as a presenter on ITV's This Morning after 14 years, citing the need to focus on her family and personal well-being. In an interview, she described the experience as extremely challenging, but emphasized the importance of moving forward and focusing on the positive aspects of her life. She has since returned to television, participating in projects such as Netflix's Celebrity Bear Hunt and ITV's Dancing on Ice. The case highlighted the dangers of online stalking and the potential for such obsessions to escalate into real-world threats. It also underscored the importance of vigilance and the role of law enforcement in preventing such crimes. As of October 2025, Gavin Plum remains incarcerated, serving his life sentence. He is scheduled to have his appeal heard at the Court of Appeal in London on October 21, 2025. Holly Willoughby continues to rebuild her life and career, supported by her family, and a renewed focus on her professional endeavors. Case 11. Isaac Nathaniel Christenberry. It was a quiet night when the lifeless bodies of Jenna Cox and her parents were discovered in their Maiden, North Carolina home. But what followed would uncover a tale more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Isaac Nathaniel Christenberry was born in 1996 and raised in Lincoln County, North Carolina. He had a history of strained relationships and had previously been in a romantic relationship with Jenna Cox. Their relationship ended in October 2024, which may have contributed to the tragic events that unfolded. While there were no public records of prior violent offenses, the abrupt end of his relationship with Jenna Cox may have acted as a catalyst for the subsequent tragedy. On October 22, 2024, Isaac Christenberry's emotions escalated following his breakup with Jenna Cox. Believing he had been wronged, he drove to the Cox residence in Maiden, North Carolina, where he had previously lived. Upon arrival, Christenberry shot and killed 28-year-old Jenna Cox and her parents, 61-year-old Charles and Cindy Cox. The murders occurred in front of their 10-year-old grandson, whom Christenberry threatened by holding a gun to his head before letting him go. The boy fled to a neighbor's house and called 911. Christenberry then fled the scene. What do you think triggered Isaac Christenberry to do this? Leave your thoughts in the comments. The 10-year-old grandson's 911 call led authorities to the crime scene. Christenberry was apprehended in Lincoln County, approximately 30 minutes from Maiden after a brief pursuit. Investigators found a trail of blood, shell casings, and bullet holes at the scene. Christenberry's parents informed authorities that he had been near the residence at the time of the shooting. During a custodial interview, Christenberry confessed to the murders. On February 19, 2025, Christenberry pleaded guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms, without the possibility of parole. Christenberry is currently incarcerated in the custody of the North Carolina Division of Adult Corrections, serving his sentence without the possibility of parole. The community was left reeling from the news, unable to comprehend how someone they trusted could commit such an atrocity. Neighbors held a vigil to honor the victims and support the young survivor. The case garnered significant media attention, with many questioning how the relationship dynamics led to such a violent outcome. The extensive coverage highlighted the importance of addressing domestic violence and mental health issues. Isaac Nathaniel Christenberry remains incarcerated, serving his sentence in a North Carolina state prison. He has shown no public signs of remorse. Do you think Isaac has truly changed? Will he ever be eligible for parole? Share your thoughts below. Case 12. Kandawaswika Kahari. It was a quiet afternoon in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, when police arrived at the home of 46-year-old Susan Ramberg. Inside, they discovered a chilling scene. Susan's lifeless body was found in the trunk of her car, and her 10-year-old son was alone, having been left to fend for himself for days. Susan Ramberg was a devoted mother known for her kindness and empathy. She had been in a relationship with 20-year-old Kandawaswika Kahari, who had been living with her and her son. Neighbors reported that their relationship appeared normal, and there were no signs of trouble until shortly before the tragic event. In early March 2023, Susan and Kahari had an argument inside the garage of their home. During the altercation, Kahari punched and strangled Susan to death. He then placed her body in the trunk of her car and instructed her son to help make a bed for her. For the next several days, the boy was left alone in the house with his mother's decomposing body. Kahari occasionally checked on him and brought him food. The crime came to light when Kahari's father called the police, expressing concern about Susan's well-being. Upon arriving at the home, officers found the boy alone and Susan's body in the trunk. Kahari was arrested and charged with aggravated murder, felonious assault, and gross abuse of a corpse. In December 2024, he pleaded guilty to all charges. At his sentencing in March 2025, the judge described the murder as one of the most horrific cases they had encountered. Kahari was sentenced to 39 years to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 39 years. The community was left reeling from the news, struggling to comprehend how someone they trusted could commit such an atrocity. The boy, who had been subjected to unimaginable trauma, was placed into protective custody and began receiving counseling. The case garnered significant media attention, highlighting issues of domestic violence and the vulnerability of children in such environments. It sparked discussions about the importance of recognizing warning signs in relationships and the need for intervention before situations escalate to violence. As of now, Kandawaswika Kahari remains incarcerated, serving his sentence. While he has shown no public remorse, the community continues to grapple with the impact of his actions. Case 13. Timothy Ray Jones, Jr. On August 28, 2014, Timothy Ray Jones, Jr., a 32-year-old father from Lexington, South Carolina, committed one of the most horrific crimes in the state's history. He murdered his 5 children, Mira, 8, Elias, 7, Natan, 6, Gabriel, 2, and Abigail, 1, in their mobile home, strangling 4 and beating 1 to death. Afterward, he transported their bodies across multiple states, ultimately burying them in rural Alabama. Jones was arrested on September 6, 2014 in Mississippi during a DUI checkpoint. His arrest led to the discovery of the children's remains and the unraveling of a tragic tale of abuse and neglect. Timothy Ray Jones, Jr. was born on December 28, 1981, in Chicago, Illinois. Raised in a seemingly normal family, he later moved to South Carolina. Jones married Amber Kaiser, and they had 5 children together. However, their marriage faced challenges, including allegations of abuse and neglect. Despite these issues, Jones was awarded primary custody of the children following their divorce in 2013. Reports indicated that the children suffered physical abuse and neglect while in his custody, with the South Carolina Department of Social Services documenting instances of substantial risk of physical injury and dirty conditions in the home. By August 28, 2014, Jones was facing significant personal struggles, including the stress of an impending project at work. He smoked synthetic marijuana to cope with the stress. Later that day, he picked up his children from school and daycare, took them home and killed 4 of them by strangling each child at the neck with his bare hands. The 5th child was reportedly beaten, causing a gradual and painful death. It wasn't until September 6, 2014, that investigators began to connect the dots. Jones was stopped at a DUI checkpoint in Mississippi, where authorities discovered blood, maggots, and children's clothes in his SUV. He led them to the children's bodies, which were found in a rural area off Highway 10 near Camden, Alabama. During the investigation, Jones remained calm, but detectives noticed signs that hinted at his involvement, such as his inconsistent statements and lack of remorse. He claimed that a demonic voice told him to kill his children. However, a court-appointed psychologist later declared that Jones made a conscious decision to kill his children. The defense argued that Jones acted out of mental illness, but the prosecution's case was compelling. Evidence showed that Jones had a history of abuse and neglect, and his actions were premeditated. On June 4, 2019, a jury found Jones guilty of all 5 counts of murder. On June 13, 2019, the jury sentenced him to death. The community was left reeling from the news, unable to comprehend how someone they trusted could commit such an atrocity. Amber Kaiser, the children's mother, filed a lawsuit against the South Carolina Department of Social Services and the Lexington County Department of Social Services, alleging that they failed to protect the children from their father's abuse. In 2024, the state agreed to pay her $1.5 million in a settlement. The media coverage was extensive, with many questioning how Jones managed to hide his true nature for so long. His case sparked debates about child custody laws, the effectiveness of child protective services, and the signs of potential abuse. As of now, Jones remains incarcerated, serving his sentence on death row at Broad River Correctional Institution in Columbia, South Carolina. Some argue that he hasn't truly changed, while others believe he's shown remorse over the years. If you found this story as unsettling as we did, Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a case. As always, thank you for your support and for helping us bring these voices and these stories into the light. Until next time, remember, justice isn't always served in the courtroom. Stay vigilant, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next verdict.